So it's an enormous pleasure and privilege to welcome our first guest on the show today, Chris Giancarlo, Chairman Emeritus of the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission, Senior Counsel at Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, co-founder of the Digital Dollar Foundation, and most recently, and we're so proud of this, Senior Advisor to Baton Systems. Chris, welcome to the show. Great pleasure to have you here, as I said before. I think you'd like to start off with a few words.
I do, Alex. Thanks very much. It's great to be with you. During my 5-year tenure at the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, I talked a lot about the significant operational, transactional, and capital complexities that were imposed upon the financial service industry following the 2008 financial crisis. And I also talked about how advanced new technologies are really needed to enable the financial service industry to manage those operational and capital complexities. Well, since completing my government service in 2019, I've returned to the private sector, where I spent the first 30 years of my career. Well, I'm now an investor, and I also serve as an advisor and director to a number of both established and early stage financial service companies. Some are in traditional areas of institutional trading and markets, and others are in cutting edge fintech and cryptocurrency. Well, since returning to the industry, it strikes me all over again of the need for advanced technological solutions to those operational and capital complexities. It's as great as it's ever was. And that's why I'm so pleased to serve as an advisor to Baton Systems. Baton directly addresses those operational and capital complexities by automating and synchronizing the movement of assets to reduce risk and to provide settlement certainty. Baton allows trading firms to optimize the use of cash and securities, reduce settlement costs, and therefore free up assets and free up capital. Simply put, Baton is a faster and better way to deploy financial assets. It's a better way to do business. Baton is adept at overcoming settlement and liquidity challenges for peer-to-peer FX transactions and internal cash management and treasury operations. And in a series that's in an area that's of particular interest to me because of my work in the over-the-counter derivative markets, Baton solves the enormous challenges of collateral workflow for cleared derivatives. And in the wake of the Archegos meltdown, global regulatory standards at IOSCO, the International Organization for Securities Commissioners, have begun a process of reviewing derivative margin rules and internal audit of collateral management. And I think firms will find that Baton provides an answer to this renewed regulatory call for more accurate and accountable management of trade collateral. So I'm really proud and really delighted to be part of a solution to a problem that I've been talking about for a long time. That's why I'm so proud and so pleased to be part of Baton Systems.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. And I think for the viewers, there'll be a presentation by Tucker Donor later on in the show, actually showing the collateral workflow solution. So if you've not seen it yet, really worthwhile hanging around to see that later on. I think you'll find it interesting. Chris, let me start by referencing a recent interview that you gave where you spoke about, and I think this was at a national level, but I want to sort of drill down. You spoke about the obsolescence of current financial infrastructure and regulatory structures. And I guess the question that I have to you is, to what extent do you think an improvement to payments and settlements processes generates a competitive advantage at a national level, but also for individual firms or for groups of firms that choose to participate in that common framework?
We in the West, we enjoy a tremendously sophisticated financial system with tremendously sophisticated financial infrastructure. But it's all premised on models and forms that were built in the 20th century before this new wave of the internet that some people call the Internet of Value. And what I've been talking about a lot publicly is how those venerable systems that we built in the 20th century are really in for a ground-shaking, the ground-shaking impact of this next wave of the internet. And we're seeing that, with the blockchain revolution, which really changes the whole way we go about recognizing transfer of value. And so the time has really come for us to take a new look at those old antiquated systems. And this is especially so in the wake of all the changes that have been wrought by the financial crisis. As I said in my remarks, the financial crisis caused regulators to impose a whole set of new mandates and capital requirements on that old venerable financial structure that are really difficult and really complex and consume a lot of capital. There's a lot of latency. And the only way to break through that is going to be through some of these new technologies, of which Baton is really pioneering a lot. So I think there's enormous opportunity. There's also enormous risk in not moving forward and not adopting some of these newer technologies. The amount of capital capture, the amount of settlement uncertainty, of collateral management or mismanagement or undermanagement, lack of precision in management is what's at stake here. It's both challenge and opportunity for firms to adopt new technologies in the wake of this really rise of a whole new way of looking at the movement of things of value.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And so thank you for that, Chris. It seems to me that this obsolescence, this challenge has been building up over a number of years, and there hasn't been much movement in recent years. What's changed now? Is it that we can, or has something else happened? Was we need to more, or what? What are the drivers here for change?
Yeah, so Alex, before I went to spend 5 years in Washington as a regulator of the derivative markets, I spent 15 years on Wall Street at one of the leading dealer brokerage firms, GFI, that served a lot of the major houses on Wall Street, not just in the US, but globally. And I saw firsthand how some firms manage their collateral, manage their over-the-counter bilateral collateral very, very efficiently. But we also saw how some firms managed it very inefficiently. And when the financial crisis came, that got them in trouble. And even outside of financial crisis conditions, it was it was sunk costs. It was a waste of money because it wasn't done as efficiently as it could be. I know that some of those same conditions are in place today. Some firms manage their collateral well, some don't. That's a difference between leadership and lagging behind. That's a difference between maximizing one's balance sheet and underutilizing one's balance sheet. But what raises the stakes are two things. One, the interest of regulators now in collateral management in the wake of Archegos. And as I mentioned in my remarks, IOSCO, which is the gathering point for all the world's securities regulators, has now made this an agenda item. Its chairman, Ashley Alder, recently stated that this is now going to be top of IOSCO's agenda. So the regulatory challenge is one. The other one is simply that technology is coming on fast. There are going to be more efficient ways of doing this, and leading firms are going to adopt that technology. And the firms that don't are actually going to be at a capital disadvantage and a collateral disadvantage to the leading firms that adopt these new methodologies.
Yeah, okay. I think that sounds exactly right to me. And I think what you said there, you spoke about collateral, I think applies to sort of settlements and payments generally, just in terms of the whole leadership piece. So moving on, I think, to sort of settlements and payments, where Baton's solution included, almost all, I think perhaps all of the solutions that you see being proposed do require multiple participants to join a common network, and it's that commonality that gives efficiency and control, perhaps also some degree of centralized governance, which you also referred to in a recent interview. So how do you think these networks get to be built and get to be encouraged to grow? What are the characteristics then of the participants and the network itself that mean that something will flourish and something else won't flourish?
Right. So look, in the last 20, 30 years, the power of the internet, we've all become accustomed to the power of networks, right? Just in retail shopping, look at the power of the network. If you're on the grid, your ability to retail is enormous. If you're off the grid, it's very, very challenging. So networks are extremely powerful, and they provide power to the participants in them. We've seen that. But how were networks built? Well, it's carrot and stick, right? Carrot is the market leaders recognize the power of networks and join early. And the stick is the laggards fall behind and lose market access by not being a leader in the network development. But there's also now going to be a regulatory component as well, to add an additional stick to that. Regulators are going to demand collateral management and transparency and efficiency. They're going to demand settlement efficiency and settlement certainty. And so the answer to that is going to be being part of the network. And so I think that the combination of carrot and stick is going to drive, first, as it always does, right? The most forward-leaning, thoughtful firms are going to be the leaders. And I encourage all firms to prioritize this, because being early is going to have certain advantages in its own right.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting response. And so if as we think about maybe the industry as a whole, and maybe we think about those participants that that may be slower adopters, if these processes aren't changed and there are new market participants who are trying to stake a claim, there are market participants who haven't been global leaders who are stepping up and taking advantage of this change, how much risk do you think, how serious is the risk to the current leaders in banking and specifically in capital markets if they don't adapt?
I think the risk is been present for some time, but I think it's the importance of it is only going to go up. I want to point to regulators focusing on this issue. I want to point to the rapid development of the technology. Technology is its development, but also its deployment is accelerating in the financial service industry. Leaders are accelerating and gaining even ground over the laggards.
Yeah.
And so the importance of being part of the wave is more important, I think, than it ever was. I don't think one can wait and think they can join late in the day and have the same opportunities of those who moved earlier on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I guess the final question for you, I think we're probably running short of time now, but I just want to ask this: is there enough momentum now to solve, not, I guess, to implement the solutions? I think we know that from a technical perspective, the solutions are available. Is there enough momentum now to implement and deploy these solutions now for settlements and payments and related issues? Or do we need to have another crisis, another sort of regulatory sort of, strong arming to prompt that sort of radical rethink and radical readjustment?
Yeah, so the business cycle always plays such an important cycle in the cycle of change, and unfortunately, when the sun shines, there are those that follow the old adage of making hay, and unfortunately, when the sun shines, some don't follow that adage and use it to just simply do it the old-fashioned way and try to maximize the return. The problem is now is the perfect time to adopt systems that give greater settlement certainty, that provide greater collateral management precision, because that additional efficiency is going to be perhaps the difference when the sun stops shining in success or failure. And so I think the wise are the ones that will use this opportunity of robust markets, a risk-on environment, to use it to shore up their resources, their capital resources. They'll serve them well when markets are less robust than they are now.
Wonderful. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much indeed for taking the time. Welcome aboard Baton Systems. We're delighted to have you, and I hope we can invite you back for another show sometime soon. Thanks a lot.
Let's do it soon. Great to be here.